the fleshed out strats that really kind of go with banks. I'm not shocked to see that one get banned out first. But what I am kind of shocked about is to see Villa get banned fairly late, if banned at all. And the fact that we're going to Chalet makes me a very happy boy, because this is my favorite map of all time, bar none. Oh, I love this map.
Yeah, it's becoming a favorite for me at the moment too. Again, it's kind of what's actually quite interesting is that we've seen Coastline and Chalet being the last kind of pick, and both of these maps being very attacker favored compared to the others. Again, people are kind of saying that, like, yeah, Chalet is kind of becoming like a new Coastline. And in theory, some of the strategies that you can use on Coastline, you can also use on Chalet. Again, things like just applying pressure with global abilities on various balconies, and, you know, various window holds as well. We will probably see a lot of that on Chalet, hopefully as well. What I will say is, obviously, being a slightly larger map, there's still a lot of map control that needs to be taken as well. So I'm very curious to see how the attack is going to go down, whether or not we are going to see, you know, a lot of control being gained first in order for the collapse to come through afterwards, or whether we're going to see a direct approach with that global ability.
You kind of touched on the topic of Chalet kind of being kind of like a new Coastline, and I have to agree. Coastline had a big period of time where in Pro League you see it kind of be still defender favorited, but T3, T4, T2 even, you don't really see it that way. It is really attacker favorited. Chalet is still attacker favorited in Pro League to this day. It's getting less and less as time passes, but it's still attacker favorited. This map is fun. It's one of the only maps where you're seeing attacking roster kind of be able to have fun with their operator lineups, because there's a lot that are viable. Obviously, the global ultimates you talked about, the wide range of being able to take out the roam denial. Jackal is extremely strong on this map, in my personal opinion, because the basement roaming game for a defensive team is spectacular. You can play that to a pristine level of play, and you kind of need a very dominant and positive player to be able to rush them down and find them, bring a second one in to assist. And the biggest battleground, in my opinion, is going to be what tertiary objective we see come into play. Some people swear and say that if you pick that basement hold, that you're a terrible team, and I disagree. I think you're a team that wants to have fun, and I like having fun, because that objective is really fun to me.
Well, it's in the basement side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I rate the basement. I think especially because of the changes. Nice side to hold. And again, I was wondering how these bans were going to go, and immediately we're seeing that classic Thatcher ban come through, which is, I'm not too surprised about that. Again, it'll be curious now to see if Talentless ban out something like a Maverick or something, because I think that really changes the way that people choose to attack this. There we are, actually. The Maverick is indeed going to be banned out. So now, in order to enable that hard breach to do their job, you're going to have to see a lot of verticality come through from the attackers. So once again, map control is the name of the game.
First offensive ban is going to be Frost, which is interesting. I do think that Frost is actually extremely strong on this map. In my opinion, she kind of changes up the pacing at which a team would try to attack going forward, and that can slow down the attack, which is a huge aspect to a very large portion of this map. When you're saying this is attacker favorited, that leads an attacking team to have confidence. They want to step into the site quickly or work on those balcony angles. Any sort of time that you can buy, whether it's forcing them to look down at their feet to shoot out those first, is time that you can kind of look forward to go for that kill. And a lot of players are really playing those audio cues and listening out for that vault over that window ledge, and they can really act on that. So if you're not comfortable being able to be rushed upon, maybe you're expecting to solo push a couple of these balconies, then yeah, getting rid of a Frost is going to be a fairly strong pick for you. But it also does leave open Mira, who is fairly strong on this map. I would say strongest when it comes down to bar in that billiards games room, but she also has a really strong viability to its office to hold down that hallway. She is going to be a threat, to say the least. And well, they did actually pick it up. They're teasing the 6th pick. I'm not sure who they would necessarily switch on over to, but Goyo makes a lot of sense, especially for the kitchen and dining objective. Be able to lock down a couple of these doorways and to be able to place it up on some of the countertops to, I guess, keep sightlines even more favored towards your side.
I mean, the main thing I picked up on there really is, you know, obviously the Warden, which is certainly an interesting one for me, but just the sheer amount of shields.
You get a problem with Netlanders?
No. The amount of shields that they're bringing to this defensive site. And again, I'm curious to see if we'll see some of that utility invested upstairs just to help them maintain that top floor control, because I think even though, you know, there has been a lot of changes, when you are approaching this kind of kitchen site still, you do want to be maintaining that top floor control and really put pressure vertically on the defenders and pull them away from site a little bit so you can make a really smooth and safe collapse. So yeah, really want to see where these shields are going to go, to be honest.
I personally am a huge fan of playing behind piano, and when you can put a shield over there, it's extremely strong. But I also feel like it's a double-edged sword to put a Vulcan shield up there because, yeah, it covers you, but it also can come back to bite you in the rear.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't like that choice to do so, and a lot of teams still decide to do it. There are some times where you can place it really well, and you can actually stand in that corner and still not be, I guess, cut off by that fire on the ground, but there's a lot of situations where you still do, and it kind of comes down to precision, placements, a little bit of luck sometimes, it feels like, but for a defensive team like Homeland, I think they've got what it takes to be able to place that correctly, work with it, and Talentless is going to have their money cut out for them to actually decide to push forward, but they do have Rotero drones, Flores is on the board, they have a lot they can work with, they've got Twitch for the information, they also brought Fuse, which had that huge buff, which allows you to go through these hard walls, through reinforcements, and that's going to be something that can possibly catch Homeland off guard, and really allow for the side of Talentless to actually find themselves a early pick, or maybe even a mid to late pick, in a situation that they usually wouldn't be able to do if they didn't have that pick.
Yeah, 100%. Completely changing the way that a lot of approaches can make, especially because realistically, if you think about it, a Fuse can potentially just breach a wall all by themselves at this point, especially with that secondary hard breach utility. So yeah, very, very impactful indeed. Again, we're going to see that Flores drone start to come through, presumably to remove a lot of that utility around the piano area, although I haven't actually quite heard it go off yet, so I think it may have been shot out by one of the defenders. That's a bit spicy. Okay, so there's another shield in that piano area facing towards that double door, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Again, I think it's going to catch them a little bit off guard because perhaps they'll waste the utility thinking it's only that shield and forget about the default standard one on the actual piano itself. That could be quite interesting to see what happens.
If it works, it works, right? I mean, it's a way to kind of waste utility. It's kind of a way to work with it. And when a defensive setup has a really big emphasis on shields, that shield consumption simulator we saw on Oregon about 6 months back, that was really meta. Could definitely be something that's viable here on this map as well, and it's just a way to buy time against Talentless, and it's really working out, because we're in the last stages of this round, 40 seconds left on the clock, and they haven't even taken control of that second floor near piano, which means they don't have full control of basically any sort of dominant position. They'll have to start hard breaching towards this fireplace wall. The reinforcement is continuously set up in stone, but toxic games are going to have to be taken out, and they'll have to be able to find some kills on top of it as trade goes for trade. Midlight takes Tex, but Ava took out Midlight on the refrag, but 4v4 will spell disaster if Homeland can't continue to hold on. Secret finds May. A 4v3. Dyer still has one toxic babe left. Will toss it. We'll be able to get it off, but this doorway leading from hallway is going to be a little bit dangerous to work with. And only 5 seconds remaining. It does not seem positive for them. Homeland only need to hold out for 2 seconds, and the toxic babe will choke one out for the count. Homeland Nova will stay in, be able to win the first round defensively on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's interesting to see so much utility used in the way it was. Again, double shield in the piano area. That was a really spicy move, to be honest. And ultimately, only one team can win that opening round. And I'm going to be very curious to see any adaptations that come through from Talentless right now. But it doesn't look like they're going to go for anything different at the moment. That Cav was a little bit of a sneaky one, just kind of baiting them a little bit with it. Perhaps that's kind of like a weird psychological mind game of like, I really want you to waste time trying to look for this Cav now. That could be quite clever, but again, they do have the Jackal, so depending on how they're going to use that Jackal ability, they should be able to determine that perhaps there isn't going to be a Cav lurking in the shadows somewhere. I
don't know, my eyes are really just drawn right now towards the staggered walls. I really like the setup that you can bring to on this objective. I talked about it previously with the mirror. It can be extremely strong, and they're not really opting to do so. They're not really trying to bring it, and I don't think that's necessarily bad play. When you have an Aroni, you've got Aroni, you've got some great positions. The surrogates can really watch that entrance in towards bar. You're able to cut out that hallway, and that's kind of the biggest aspect when it comes to kind of entering. You've got windows on this northern edge that lead towards this main hallway we see, and the mezzanine is fairly, I would say, weak. You can poke and prod if you're talentless to try to gain control of that mezzanine from balcony side, and that could be a very strong way for you to engage towards this Homeland defense. And you can get control of the second floor, work in a vertical fashion, and you have the sledge to be able to do so, and you have that nade to work with. But I like Iana because you kind of get that extra set of nades in the pocket. Same thing with Maverick. You kind of can rely on being able to play things slow, but with some explosive ordnance in the back pocket, whether it be an early kill, a late kill, damage at all, a down, whatever it may be. Nades are a great way to kind of let your presence be known and to flush out the defense that would be kind of anchoring, which was a huge, huge side of Talentless, where they failed to do so in the first round. They tossed nades, they used the Rotero drones, but the ADSs and that baited shield, they had no way to gain control of the aerial play. And this time around, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for them, but it's just a matter of continuing to flush out towards this mezzanine side.
Yeah, 100%. And we're already seeing this fuse utility get used to deal with anything that might be lurking around. But again, these very standard shield setups. We've got one at the top of the stairs there. We've also got one kind of facing towards that double door as well, which is, again, it's this kind of, again, standard setup is how I'll describe it. But because of that, you do expect the attack to know how to deal with it at this point as well.
I don't like the defensive. Actually, you know what? No, I kind of like this position. When you're putting a player with a shield over towards that staircase, you do have to worry about a lot of the opposition. I don't think I see any ADSs over there, but they placed it far enough forward that they don't have to sit there themselves, and they can just immediately flush and rotate away where necessary. And I think that's a good bait, because you can run away. Dire could run away at this point in time, and she can escape to safety, so to say, but she can also sit there and lie in wait and kind of be that prowling player that can catch the attack off guard, because they think they flushed them out. And I think that she's still sitting there. Yeah, in fact, she is. Maybe Dawn may be aware of her position because she hasn't seen her rotate away, but when they don't have all the information necessary to kind of cascade towards the site, it's a very dangerous position they're in. They'll have to smoke off towards supply room. They'll have to find themselves kills. They will be able to, unfortunately, lose one player because it'll be Strona with that Rona who gets the job done, and finally they'll find two of the kills of their own. That's Dawn and May who cap off two of the opposition. Have to get the diffuser down and hope for the post plan as the fight goes towards the site. Ava takes out May. One more kill dropping to their side. It's neck and neck, but Ava's able to find one more on top of it. A 2v2 situation. Ava's going to go ahead and start for the counter diffuse. Is she sticking it at this point in time? She just might be. They have to rush towards the site in a dangerous position. Homeland Nova will get the defuse off, and they just step too far into the site with no real way to stop the counterattack.
Absolutely, and again, it's that's very impressive to be able to secure a post plant like that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, why were the attackers not holding that, not holding the angles that perhaps they should have been, and then not investing utility if they needed it as well? Again, drone in pocket on the fuse, and all you need to do is just yeet that out and get a little bit of intel, and then you can see, yes, that diffuse is being held by the defenders. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. Perhaps they'll go back on the VOD review and be like, yeah, maybe we should have done a little bit more investment in that post plan. But I think sometimes it catches players off guard, like they're like, okay, we go for that plant and we get the plant, but then there's that like missing gap sometimes, or even a surprise where perhaps they weren't expecting themselves to go for the plant. Perhaps again, especially if you're planting in a more neutral place that perhaps you're not used to going for, it's kind of like, oh, where do we hold now? So there's always that to take into account as well. Again, just some of these shield placements that are coming through, very aggressive holds from the defense, and I have to rate it, to be honest.
I'm seeing a lot of new things. I'm seeing a lot of new. That's what I'll say here. It's not bad. I mean, from the way that they're attempting to hold this and the way they have been holding this, they're doing it fairly well, and I like what Homeland is bringing to the table. It's obviously working. And whether that's because Homeland know what they're doing or because Talentless don't know how to counteract what they're doing, I have no clue. Because to me, Homeland's setup has a couple of gaps that I can visibly see, but they're really putting a vice grip on those gaps as well. They're visible. They're kind of like a baited gap, but really and truly, that gap is non-existent. They still are aware of their own. They're aware of their own misgivings, of their own problems that may occur, and they're ready to counteract them at that moment to come. And that's what kind of differentiated, in my mind, a roster or a team that has a strategy book and just kind of places down that strategy, kind of like a blueprint, copy and paste it in each and every round, and then a team that is actively aware of their weaknesses and the positives of each and every one of their strategies and is able to adapt on the fly for it. I casted a game yesterday where a team, they had the strategies, they were just slightly misplacing the positions for it because they didn't truly understand why they were placing the strategies. And for Homeland, they know why they're doing it and they're ready to play with it. And when they've got players still on the prowl that are being a huge thorn on the side of Talentless, and May's just not able to find them first and loses their life in the process, Homeland are going to continue to cascade on top of their opposition. They're going to continue to deal out the hurt. It's already a 5v3 and it's only a minute and 25 into the round.
Yeah, and absolutely losing that many players in the first half can be a little bit tricky, especially when realistically I think Homeland, for the most part, they've been playing pretty passive in how they're setting up their defenses, but I mean that's going to be a bit of a tricky one as well. Tex taking out Strono with a little bit of a team kill there. But again, if you think about the shield setups, things like that, the really long lines of sights, they're going for a kind of, we're going to hold this as close to sight as possible 9 times out of 10, but we're also holding it very aggressively by making these lines of sight. That's a lot of confidence. And again, it's a lot of confidence in knowing that your opponent is not going to suddenly start utility spamming you, sending in 9 million thousand flashes and things like that. So Homeland seem very, very confident in what they're doing right now.
It's just a lot of outplaying. It's a lot of mind games, and that's a huge part of Siege, right? That's my favorite part of Siege, actually. I love the mind games. Whether that be you messaging in in-game chat and kind of just maybe some slight BM, maybe some banter back and forth and jamming. It could be seen as unprofessional. I think it is just another portion of the game trying to get into your opponent's head. And there's a lot of teams that will use that to their advantage, some that don't. Right now, Homeland don't really need to do any of that. And in fact, props to them for it. They're able to play in a great way to kind of stress out Talentless in a lot of regards. And they're kind of in another point where they're nearing the last 15 seconds. A very bad situation to be in where Father Time is that extra man on the field. So, well, it was a 3v2, now a 3v1. It kind of felt like a 4v1, and it's continuing to do so because Tex and Dire just finish off the last 3 players on their side, and it was just a spectacular performance from them because they had that site locked down, completely under their control, and they knew the only positions they were able to come from was right in front of them. And that's good decision making. That's a great setup for Homeland, and it could not have been executed more flawlessly from them.
Yeah, and again, this is the thing. It is an attacker-sided map, and you do expect a bit more utility investment or aggression from the attackers on it, but we're not quite seeing that. And I would like to see Talentless, because I really do think they have it in them to pull this back if they just get a bit smarter with it, if they just start investing that utility, or even, to be honest, if they're making these massive lines of sight, start really using that smoke utility. Even like a Capitao is like a really good thing to bring a lot of the time if you are dealing with people that are just hiding in these what I would consider death spots, where you basically have a very aggressive line of sight but with a bit of defense in it too, so either a shield or a reinforced wall for you to hide behind, and you'll just kind of jiggle peek around it. If you have a Capitao and you just suddenly send in a firebolt as an example, you can just make that person be forced away from that shield, and it's like, okay, I don't actually have to destroy this because I've just pushed them back. And when people are pushing back 9 times out of 10, they are going to make a little bit of mistakes where perhaps they are going to turn their back on you a little bit, and that's the opportunity for 2 of you to swing out and get an easy kill.
I think maybe it's a problem of confidence. We talked about that last map, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just that confidence problem of they're just not feeling comfortable pushing that aggressively? Despite them, I agree. I think there's a lot of talent they're showing already. Even though their name may be Talentless, I don't think that's the case, so to say. And I'm seeing some glimpses of them that can play extremely well, and they're using utility, and they're just not being as aggressive as they need to be, and they're kind of being stuck in that rut of, hey, there's 15 seconds on the clock. There's not much for us to work with. Um, I would say they need to be more aggressive. They need to be able to step up and say, hey, I got this. This is no problem. We'll get this done. And if they're able to kind of change that mental, kind of flip that switch in their heads, I think that Talentless have a really good chance of being able to swing towards this objective or any objective, be able to pick up more kills and do it in better time.
100%. I mean, the thing that I'm a bit spooked about is if Homeland keep on this trajectory that they're on, because again, it's this idea that if people do so well on the opposite side of what you expect, then when it gets to that more favorable side, they are just going to kind of clean up at the end a little bit. But I really hope Talentless start fighting back a little bit. I want to see them get their claws out a little bit, and really make Homeland get their money's worth.
I think it's a big possibility. From what I've seen from Talentless, I think this can obviously be done, and they're still alive. They haven't lost 2 players at the very beginning to, that early set of kills that's dropped them in that last round, and that's pretty important for them, and it's going to be a big aspect for, I guess, trying to take control in the last minute of this round. They had plenty of time to do so. They're actually just one room over from the objective. They're not trying to push in from that fireplace. Instead, they're actually coming from this main entrance, and that's going to be fairly important for them in terms of time and in terms of maneuverability. They'll lose one early, and they'll find a second loss, unfortunately, to Strona with that Rona. The Rhyme is just there and readily available. It's kind of unfortunate it keeps happening, but they have to be able to set up a pincer, and that's something they didn't set up fast enough, because Militia, she's there. She's nearby, and she was ready to set that up, but her teammates just got rushed a little bit too soon, and that was what's going to start a little bit of hurt on their side, but they'll even it up a little bit as J-Knight's able to find Dire. They still have 3 available, and the 3 defensive players on Homelander not necessarily anchoring on site. 2 of them are actually ready and available on the floor above.
Yeah, we're at like an even Stevens now, a 3v3, but again, it's whether or not Homeland are going to start using these aggressive lines of sight, and certainly we're going to see Ava use an aggressive line of sight herself, whittling down the attackers even more. Midlight's going to go for a little bit of a flank there to try and go for a pinch, but Ava, yet again, this aggressive line of sight taking them down. Night Owl's going to take down Secret, and Tex is going to finish it off. Blimey me.
Blimey me. Are we back to the cross the pond terminology? We went through like 4 rounds of not having it.
That was just getting very very spicy towards the end there, and again, I think this is why this league is so enjoyable sometimes, because it just really come to the nail. And yeah, blimey me is the only way I can describe my feelings in that situation.
Despite the very dominant performance we've had from Homeland, I think you can agree that a lot of the rounds are kind of nail biters. Not necessarily in the way that they're like close in a lot of the rounds, because it is like 15 seconds left, they're forced to funnel into sight, but it's close in the way that like, what's going to happen, what could possibly be done in this situation, and it's really fun to see how that's going to like pan out and how it's going to work out. In Homeland, they had themselves an almost insurmountable defense there, and if Talentless had just stepped towards the kitchen site, the dining site, and actually had gone for that initial plan a little bit sooner, I think that they probably could have been in a post-plan situation, but they didn't really have the availability to do so. They were a little bit too worried about the floor above, and they kind of just inevitably, because of being scared, they got punished by the people they were scared of. And it's one of those situations where it's kind of need to be confident. You need to be ready. You need to be able to step up when that time comes to get towards where you need to be, which is the objective, to plant down and get into that post-plant situation. And we just didn't see that, and that's something that I think Talentless, if they worked on that, it's something that would push them just that little edge further, and it would really make this very competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Again, a nice thing that I do want to point out is I think every time the rounds are starting, I'm kind of like, okay, so this is the kind of standard thing that they do, and they're not quite taking it. They are going for, okay, let's try and get map control. And I think that's a really sensible and safe option for the side of Talentless. Again, certainly where you're in a bit of a situation where you really need to get these 2 attacking rounds in the bag. Slow and steady wins the race, as I say.
We saw that safety kind of being gathered last map, right? Where you kind of play slow, entering inside. We saw them go to the 3rd floor and then work their way down, even when it wasn't necessary. And it does work for them, but for a map like this, where the 2nd floor is like the hardest thing to take control of, and we've obviously seen Talentless fail to do so in almost every single one of these rounds. It's something that's going to be on their forefront of their minds, and they're going to have to start thinking a little bit further about where can we gather the sightlines, where can we set up crossfires, because without crossfires, it's going to be very hard for them to find a kill, because Homeland do not give themselves up. They do not put themselves in a position to lose that engagement. Look at how just staggered they are in a lot of their positions on the map. They're not getting too aggressive. They're not getting greedy. They know where they need to peek, and they know where they need to be looking to keep themselves safe, but also to be readily available to pick up that kill when they walk into their line of sight, not the other way around. That's exactly what we're seeing. 2 people working together spectacularly. Ava and Secret, they'll work together to take down Dawn and finish the kill. And they'll be able to, I guess, start to push things a little bit further for Talentless as they have to start speeding things up. They'll find one, but they still have to gain control of this library hall. They still have to gain control of this 2nd floor. No sight onto mezzanine, and a very dangerous position still to push through this dining hallway. It's a lot on their table, and they still just haven't been able to gain the confidence to start pushing forward. They don't really have the utility dump that they need to get past a lot of the situations that Homeland have set up for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And there we are again. Secret going to get another pick onto Malicious. It's now 4v2. Make that 4v1. It's all left down to May on the Jackal. They were making a good job of it. We did see a lot of utility get cleared by them after they managed to secure themselves a nice pick for the round. So, again, do you know what? I believe the 1v4. The 1v4 clutch. Let's go. No, there we go. Okay. I have been denied. Secret
Caster's
getting...
curse.
Of course it is, isn't it?
It's always Caster's
Always
curse.
the case. Always the case. I respect the 1v4 clutches. They are.
We saw it in map 1, to be fair, right? Like,
Well, that's
round 2.
exactly it. That's exactly it. Never say never with
so
these things.
We should respect it. Us of all people should be respecting it, right? We just saw it. But that was a different team, and Homeland is definitely a different defense, right? And it wasn't a post-plant situation. The no plan had gone down, and Homeland were just a little bit too much to deal with. They were not giving anything away, and that's kind of the biggest problem that Talentless have. They're not getting any easy kills. Every kill they have is like trying to climb a mountain. They're getting too close to the sun, and their wings are burning, and it's kind of being a huge downside for them, because not only are they not finding round wins, but they're also not getting very many kills in that aspect. So where usually you can say close round, a lot of these don't feel that way, and that can be really demoralizing. And that's a big part of R6. I talked about it earlier. You can text all you want and BM all you want and crack jokes and play that mind game. But there's also the mind game of just winning, and winning in good fashion. And Talentless aren't given any glimpses of that ability to win this. And I think they have the ability. It's just starting to drain on them, and they're starting to feel the weight, the pressure on their shoulders against this Homeland defense.
10 seconds to insertion.
Absolutely, but this is... I feel very bad for Talentless right now, because again, if they don't... I mean, already at this point, they have a long distance to go on their own defense here, and I'm also kind of like, I'm wondering what setups themselves they're going to do, considering how these attacks have gone, of course, because, you know, we haven't seen the utility dump that is required for a lot of these standard setups for this map, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's fair enough, but at the same time, Homeland will probably bring a lot of that utility, presumably. Again, I am just presuming this, but I am expecting them to bring a lot of this utility, and if Talentless themselves don't go for standard setups, I'm curious about what they're going to do, especially when they have such a large path to go down now. Strona getting the opening pick onto Dawn, however, so yet again, the opening kill going in favor of Homeland.
And it wasn't even like your roaming player necessarily picking that kill. They just rotated. They just moved, and they knew that they could pre-fire that window, and they find a kill off of it. And that's something that is unfortunate. You only lose a Ying, which, in my opinion, Ying is an extremely strong operator. I don't know what your opinion is. Personally, I think Ying is a one-man army. She's had R breaches before. She's got Candelas. She can sprint really fast. She's got a really strong weapon, the LMG, right? The LSW. She's strong. I love her to death. And it's something that is really strong in the right hands. And at most, you're losing Candelas in a lot of situations. and that can be kind of rough. But in this situation, you're also losing a player that can pick up kills, and that's something that is extremely important for your side, especially when you're kind of on this long-winded drought of not being able to find impact enough in terms of the kill feed.
100%. Although I will say, to be fair to them, you know, that despite that opening pick happening, half the round's gone and no follow-up thus far, but at the same time, no trade coming through from Talentless. So they have managed to get that office wall open, however, so it's going to hopefully give them a little bit of flexibility when it comes to what I will assume is going to be a pinch collapse here. What I'm hoping will be a pinch collapse, to be honest. Again, we want to start seeing this pressure down the piano way. We are actually going to see Mei make their way to that double door of piano. And again, there's not really any utility in that position right yet. There we go. Mei is going to start applying this pressure, getting the pick onto Ava.
Important frag is their first and is able to finally get that refrag back in return. J Knight will continue to pop kills in turns their favor, taking out Secret, a player inside master bedroom. Middle act fact be found, but now there's only one player left standing. It's Strona. She's left in a 1v3. She had been in a 1v4, but will find that one pick to get the job done. 27 seconds are on the clock, and Strona's in a bad spot. She needs to make the rotations. She's really aware of her own position. Now stepping towards this master bedroom, sees the soft wall, attempts to spray through, but is not actually able to find the kill that gets themselves going forward. Instead, they'll hop off the plant. Malicious still hasn't gotten that diffuser down. Strona's looking to step up again, but J-Knight, in one of the most impactful rounds we've seen, not just from their entire side, but from J-Knight specifically, she's going to continue to pop off, essentially leading her team to finding their first round win and actually able to push themselves into not have a completely scoreless halftime.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they did, because I think if they ended on the 6-0, that would be unfortunate for the mental. And again, it's just such a shame, because it's kind of like, okay, you've gone into this and you've been absolutely fighting tooth and nail all the way through this. But it's just, again, that utility clear we saw. But in that round then, I'm not sure whether it was more because they were being more aggressive with it to make up for the fact that they weren't using utility, or just the fact that we weren't seeing it felt like we weren't seeing as much defensive utility that time from Homeland.
Do you think they didn't shield pump? Do you think that's what it was? We didn't see round one again of them just placing 35 shields down.
But this is it. Like, again, it's been such an aggressive defensive setup where it's just literally like, come to us then. You know, it's fully just standing in the doorway and being like, come to us then. Very bolshy moves indeed. And this is why I'm just very curious to see how this attack is going to go and how aggressive the attack may indeed be. Thus far, the lineup looks a little bit safe to me, to be honest. It's, again, very standard, but this is exactly what I meant before when I was saying, like, I think Homeland are going to approach this in a very standard manner, and if Talentless aren't going to bring a lot of utility that the attackers need to drain, they're just going to allow all this room for aggression, and it's going to be a little bit spooky.
Yeah, there's no ADSs, so in my mind, the way I'm looking at it, there's a lot of potential for just dumping utility into the side for Homeland. They've got nades, they've got flashes, they've got smoke grenades to cut off sight lines, they have reaching rounds to pump inside as well. Heck, if you really wanted to, go ahead and throw an air jab in the mix just to mess with it, right? Like, there's so much you can dump into the site that it really will feel like a round where I think that Homeland is saying, you know, you can pull what we did. Pull out the barricades, pull out the shields. Castle barricades are fairly strong, you know, you can cut off sight lines, work with that. Maybe we don't even need to go to the second floor and push this. They can play safe, and I think that's more than likely the route they'll take, but at the same time, they've got a much more impactful set of utility, I think, than we saw from Talentless the entire time. They tried to bring Candelas to toss things in, and that got felled too quickly. They got, you know, first fragged out. We saw the Rotero drones come through. That was an attempt to get rid of a lot of the shields that they had, and it worked occasionally, but wasn't able to find all of them, which is kind of strange to say, considering Rotero drones, they're so plentiful and still need to be nerfed in that aspect. A lot of people say that as well. But from Homeland's attack and what they're doing right now, they've got so much utility. I would be very scared with the fact that you haven't brought an ADS, you haven't brought any magnets. You're really going to have to rely on the reinforcements and your own player positioning to get the job done.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, we are going to see. Well, unfortunately for Talentless, we are going to see Strona get the opening pick there, and they're very aware. This is what I mean. Look at this communication here. They're getting the light pings, and that utility is going to come in beautifully. The grenade taking down Dawn, whittling down the players of Talentless evermore. Again, this is an attacker-sided map, so the momentum that you gain on the attack, as soon as you get it, it's just like a runaway train going down a hill.
An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force, Grace.
Okay, Bill.
We're back to it. We're back to it. The nerd is coming out. Maybe I'll go find my glasses.
I can see without my glasses.
My glasses.
My glasses.
I have contacts now, so now I can't see if my eyes get slightly dry.
Aw.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Contacts are fun, but they also are quite annoying at the same time.
Glasses are powerful, however.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a
Glasses are
powerful
very
effect.
powerful.
Indeed.
They give you a whole new look. They change the shape of your face and everything. They are very powerful.
Indeedy doody. And, what else is powerful is the fact that this wall is open and a lot of this map control can now be taken upstairs. Even more map control now that Malicious is taken clean off the board. C4 is coming out, but it doesn't quite land on anyone. Again, not enough intel there to be able to land that effectively. And a 5v2... Again, it's going to be really unfortunate if it gets to match point off a flawless round. Oh.
It will be a flawless round.
Love that we both had the same reaction then. Again, I feel very, very bad for Talentless right now because I don't think they're doing anything outrageously wrong here. I just think it's more a case of knowing the kind of, standard utility that's going to be brought against them. And again, really playing into the fact that Homeland have a very specific play style here where it's very clean cut and, again, aggressive at parts. And if you're going to deal with aggressive players, you have to meet that with the same level of aggression or you just kind of become sitting ducks. I say a lot, it's kind of like, if people are on the fence, the attack have their very clean cut step A, step B, step C that they want to do. And especially when it comes to these standard approaches, you know exactly where they're going to come from and what they need to do. If you suddenly throw a spanner in the works because you pop out of nowhere and you just suddenly go on an absolute tear, or even push people when they're not expecting you to push them, you can come out on top just out of the shock factor alone 9 times out of 10. And I'd really have loved to have seen Talentless do this. Perhaps we'll get to see them do it now. Perhaps they'll be like, enough is enough. We're on match point. This has been very unfortunate for us, but we're going to have to make the most of a bad situation. And now is the time where we're just going to try something a little bit razzle-dazzly. Maybe it is a confidence thing, but maybe this is a point where they're like, oh, to hell with it. We're just going to kind of go for it.
Throw it up in the air. Have fun with it, right? I mean... It's definitely a way to go about it. I think one of the reasons why we saw Homeland be so successful last round is, especially in taking the second floor, was their capability or their ability to come from both sides. Pincering, they came from both the north and the south, and that's going to be very effective. They had come in from... I'm blanking on the call for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's aquarium. I don't know what that means. I think that's coastline. I'm completely mixing my maps. But they're coming from that window side. They're coming towards master bedroom and master bathroom, and they're able to get a pincer on the opposition, which really flushes the defense out and is a big factor for why Homeland was able to not lose a single person, because they were picking gunfights that were advantageous towards them, not taking anything in one-on-ones. And even when they did, they put themselves in a position where they had the better position to fire back, say like a higher ground. This isn't Star Wars. High ground will probably get you the win. They have less of your body to shoot, you have more, and that's exactly how we see that first pick drop as well. Maybe just a little bit lower on the ground when it came to that staircase, and much more their body was visible, and they'll take the L because of it.
100%. And again, we're going to start seeing some of this utility be used from a vertical. And again, this beautiful use of utility just to push back that shield utility that is used by the defense. They're just going through the motions so well here, and they're not having anything thrown at them that would put a stop to that, because again, it's that idea of just throw something random in, just throw something a little bit razzle-dazzly, just get a bit aggressive, and it would probably catch them off guard, because again, they are expecting you to be hiding and holding angles right now, and you're just letting them come through and burn out all that utility.
it's not really the dump that we necessarily expected previously, right? For the utility being flushed into the site. Homeland are really playing it kind of safe. They're really playing the way that they feel comfortable doing. And I think that's probably a big aspect as well for why we're seeing them be able to stay alive for the majority for a lot of these situations, find themselves good, clean kills like Texas there in Malicious, and they're able to continuously have utility available for them because they didn't necessarily just pump with no real plan to it. But they'll step in on offense. You see Secret's going to go ahead and go for the plant. The Nitro toss from below just not able to get the job done. Detonates a little bit too far away. But Tex detonated on the opposition, finding one more. 2 players left standing for Talentless. They'll have to find all 4 and the defuse if they want to stay into this map, but it's not seen to be too likely. J-Knight's going to be felled as they attempt to step up through stairs. That's Tex who just gets the job done instead. Midlight's now the only player left standing. 1 player behind Piano does manage to down Strona. With only 23 seconds remaining, there's not much time to get the job done, and they're not readily aware of the information that is there. 2 players, 1 on the outside balcony, 1 on the actual mezzanine, ready to push forward, sees the player down, does not finish the kill. The information is there, and Tex is there as well. Cleans up the last 2 players. That's going to be cleaning up the last round on top of it. A very successful game for them, 7-1. It's your scoreline for Homeland Nova.
Yeah, and again, that is a really significant scoreline. When you're having that kind of round differential, that has been a little bit of a dominant victory, to be honest. And again, I think for the side of Talentless, it's not like they were doing anything majorly like, oh my god, that's terrible, wrong. They just weren't meeting the kind of levels of aggression needed for a lot of those situations, especially when it came to, how they initially wanted to attack this. It's a tricky one because, again, I do think that, yes, Nova had these very shield-heavy setups, but to me, again, it indicates that, okay, we're just going to pull back and we're going to let you come to us and we're just going to hold this line of sight. But it sounds like, okay, we need to see this utility come through from the attack. We need to see these flashes, things like that. There's a point where I'd just be like, just take a Ying or just something like that and just utility dump at them until they can't see anything. And then, you're burning out ADSs, you're burning out Rooney gates, and then you just have to rush up on them, get that duo entry rush. And it's a tricky one. It's very much a tricky one, but I think VOD review will go a long way here for Talentless.
We did see Talentless tease the Ying pick, right? We saw them kind of come to that conclusion. And a lot of people kind of are under the misconception, and I've seen this a lot, that Ying can be and is that entry operator, kind of replacing an Ashe or a Zofia. And with their utility that she's capable of bringing, I almost say she's not. You shouldn't play her that way because you want the Candelas to be there. You want to be able to dump those. And if you lose those, then that's a huge waste of utility. That's not just a concussive blast that's off the board. That's not just a breaching round that's off the board. That's a very, I guess, how do I want to phrase this? It's a utility that may be a little niche, but it's a utility that you really needed in that situation. And so losing her very early on, being that first pick we saw in that last round of the half, devastating. I mean, it works out for them, right? And it was something that was kind of interesting to see them kind of come back from, but it wasn't exactly what we wanted to see from it. And I think that they were starting to adapt, and that's why we saw them take that round win. That's why we started to see them have some glimpses and some somewhat closer rounds towards the end of that half, towards the end of the game as well. But when that halftime switch came and you inevitably had to face off against the assault that Homeland Nova were bringing to the table, it was just too much to deal with. They were extremely aggressive. They knew the map. They knew where to toss their utility. Like we saw that nade kill behind office wall. We saw a lot of just great positioning from them for offshoot angles. It was something that was just non-expected from Talentless to be able to hold out against. And they did their best. And it was close for a large majority of some of those rounds. But inevitably, as the round just trickled forward, it was Homeland Nova that just swept at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, Homeland Nova, I think going forward, they're going to have a lot of confidence, especially with how they played just now. And realistically, looking at how they play on this map, I think this is a good map for them. They very clearly understand how to approach it on both sides, attack and defense. And they very clearly know how to communicate well on it. They're using that verticality to their advantage. They've scrimmed this map. It's very evident with the way that they played. And again, there's an air of confidence there, whereas, Talentless, perhaps they do need a bit more confidence, and then they will start to experiment a little bit more with different approaches to it. So Yeah, a lot of takeaways there. A lot of takeaways.
Yeah, well, I think this is a definitive game that, looking back and VOD reviewing and seeing what happened, what went wrong, what they were using against you, would probably be extremely important. Any team should be doing VOD review, though. I'm going to be doing VOD review. I'm not even on the team, right? I'll just like doing that and looking at my own casting and what the players are doing. And for a matchup like this, you really got to be able to look at what you're doing and take it with a grain of salt, because not every team's going to play like Homeland Nova. That's a fact. But you also need to be prepped to face teams that play like Homeland Nova. And that's where you're going to start needing more than just one kind of blanket strategy to get the job done. And you kind of need to do what they were capable of doing, like Homeland Nova was doing, where they really understood the weaknesses, the flaws, the pros, the cons of their strategies, of what they were doing, where they were going to be pushed from, the possibilities. Once they have the audio cue, they have 90% of the information they need to play off of. And that's where we're seeing that huge difference between these two sides. It's preparation and then being prepared, but not against the roster that you're facing. It was just a slight difference between their levels of preparation, and that's going to go a huge way. They both played well. I genuinely think Talentless was a team that I could look at this and go, hey, they've got some stuff underneath them. They have kills. They were rushing forward. They knew what they were doing. Their play style wasn't inherently wrong. It's just they were facing a team that outclassed them because they were so over-prepared for this situation. They were ready for every outcome.
No, 100%. I completely agree with you there. I don't think there's anything else I can add to that, to be honest.
Well, then, if there's nothing more we can add to it, I guess we can close it out. We've got another 2 games coming up as well. I think that's actually going to be casted by Crow and CDAPS, maybe. I think so. Possibly, probably. Who knows? I think we're emergency subbing in CDAPS, even though Crow was the emergency sub before that. But lots of fiddling around to figure out what's going to work. But my name is Infernos, as always known as Scott, joined here by Grace. And we've had a wonderful time casting. We've had a wonderful time watching these 2 games played out. There's 2 more to go. Stay tuned for more Project Eris.
Bye-bye.